It's Thursday, April 25th, and welcome to the New York Amsterdam News Podcast. I'm Cyril Josh Barker, coming to you from the offices of the New York Amsterdam News in Harlem. On today's podcast, my guest is State Assemblyman Charles Barron, who has been on the front lines of the Chanel Lewis case. But first, I've got your Am News headlines. On page 1, we have court sentences Lewis to life with no parole for Vetrano's death by Stefan Johnson and Am News editor Nyaba Rinde, highlighting this week's death sentencing of Chanel Lewis. The sentencing was postponed due to allegations of potential juror misconduct. However, this week, a judge went through with the sentencing. Lewis was convicted by an all-white jury of raping and murdering Karina Vetrano in Howard Beach. The Legal Aid Society says they will continue to fight for Lewis. New fare hikes for the MTA went into effect this week. 7-day unlimited Metro cards increased from $32 to $33, and 30-day calendar monthly unlimited ride Metro cards increased from $121 to $127. Opponents say the fare hikes are on public transit would negatively affect working-class New Yorkers. The northeast corner of 123rd Street and St. Nicholas Avenue in Harlem now bears the name of famed acting and civil rights couple Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis. The Dwyer Cultural Center hosted the ceremonial unveiling of Ruby Dee Place and Ossie Davis Way on Saturday. The couple is being honored for their groundbreaking programs within the arts, and you can read that and some more stories on AmsterdamNews.com, also in the newspaper as well, that's on newsstands now. I just have to say, I went out to the Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee street renaming, and it was absolutely amazing, and so we're so happy about that. So congratulations to them and the family as well. Very nice people. We're actually going to be featuring Ruby Dee's daughter in the paper next week. Well, my guest this week is State Assemblyman Charles Barron from Brooklyn, who has been on the front lines of the Chanel Lewis case. He was called by Lewis's family and attended several days of both trials and was at this week's sentencing. He's with me to discuss the latest developments in that case. Welcome to the podcast, Assemblyman Barron. How are you?
Well, Josh, thank you so much for having me on. And I want to say off the top of the program here, we cannot thank the Amsterdam News, yourself, Nyaba, and Eleanor, enough for the coverage you gave it and the insightful and accuracy in your articles regarding this trial. And the family, I know they're appreciative. I spoke to the mother, and she really appreciated what the Amsterdam News and its coverage has done for the case and her son.
Yeah, well, we thank you so much, and I have to give credit where credit is due. It's Nyaba Rinde and Stefan Johnson who actually did that story. Both of them did a phenomenal job, so great work on their behalf for covering the story. But let's get started here. So this case, a lot of people are talking about it. We had the sentencing this week. We've been covering since day one. Give us your take on what's going on with this, how this is going on. And this is actually a pervasive problem that we're seeing that's been going on for a long time when it comes to court cases like this. Go ahead, tell us.
Well, this is reaching a new racism in the NYPD and police precincts across the country, and then the prosecutor's office and the injustice system has reached a very sophisticated and technological heights, in that they're using DNA and coerced confessions as a means for putting black men in particular, but black people in prison and blaming them on different trials. You had the situation in Boston. Remember this this woman drowned her children and killed her children, and they blamed black men for it, and black men even confessed to it.
Right.
And they had all of this stuff, only to find out it was not them, it was the white family members. Yeah. And we have in the Innocence Project. There have been numerous cases in the Innocence Project where we had confessions and DNA evidence on innocent people who later on were found to be innocent. So this case takes that same kind of character. Right. In August 2nd, 2016, this was actually 2.5 years ago, when Lewis was allegedly charged with, was charged eventually with sexual assault and the strangling of Vetrano. And we always say our condolences to the family. I understand their pain, their suffering, but he's innocent. He didn't do it, and that's the differences we have with the two families. But in any event, that when this occurred, they were originally looking for two white men, according to an anonymous letter on how the police conducted their investigation and prosecution and search, because they knew that the initial suspects were two whites, and they started to swab a bunch of black folk, about over 300 swabbed in the area, and had crimes committed around that time and in that area. They start looking for, all of a sudden, they start looking for a black man. And then this Detective Russo decides that, wait a minute, 2 months prior to this killing, he saw Chanel in the area. And he thought he was strange because he had a hoodie on and it was warm. Can you believe that? Justified this illegal, unconstitutional stop and frisk. And that's when they got his information. So after months of the investigation going nowhere, and they obviously didn't find the white suspects, they decided it was somebody black, and they was going to pin it on somebody black. Those are my opinions. They wasn't going to pin it on somebody black. And then they came up with this detective, just came to his mind, Chanel, the one that I saw that looked suspicious. So they go to Chanel's house, and they say that they wanted to swab him. They didn't say this to his mother. His mother was in the back when the police came to the house and talking to him. And by the time they swabbed him and everything, she wasn't even there. She didn't give them permission to do that. Right. And, of course, he said, no problem, because I didn't do nothing. And so they went and they swabbed him, and the rest is recent history. So now we get to court in the first trial. There's the jurors were so convinced that the DNA was refutable because the way they took the DNA off the side of her neck, the back of her neck, and not on the side where the hands were supposed to be, where they choked her. And then they didn't swab any area of her private area where they said the rape occurred, that wasn't swabbed. And then the fingernails had several different DNAs there, not just allegedly Chanel's. Now, some people might say they didn't arrest Chanel until 6 months afterwards, so her body was already buried. And how would they put his DNA on her body if it's buried? That's not how it happens. They take the DNA from the body, and they have it in their laboratory. So they don't have to put his DNA on her body. They could just put it in with the DNA that they swabbed from her body. They don't have to put it in, because people think, we couldn't have planted it because she was already buried. No.
It's very easy to do that.
It's easy to do that. If they swab you, Josh, and something happens in the area that you are, they can say that, I saw Josh in that area, and we got DNA, and the DNA that they got from whatever forensic evidence they have, they can just mix yours in there and say they got yours from that area. So it's quite easy to do. And if people don't think the NYPD is beyond doing something, they need to look at the history of policing in America. So now, the first jury, they showed the confession, because the two most important and critical pieces in this case was the DNA and the confession. So he's in the precinct for 2-3 hours at first, and he said, look, I want to go home. I don't know why y'all have me here. I want my mother. I want to get out of here. For 2 hours, he was saying he didn't do nothing. He's innocent. What are you talking about? Just let me out. They wound up keeping him there for almost 12 hours. They kept him there for hours until they finally said, look, what do I have to say to go home? You have to tell us what happened. What happened with what? What you did what do I have to say? He said, fine. He starts talking to them and winds up saying what they wanted him to say, and he even got that wrong, because he said she had on a yellow, this came out in court, that she had a yellow top on when she had a black top on. And then the people in court, the prosecutor said he confused her yellow top with her yellow sneakers.
Wow.
And that's why he said yellow top. So obviously, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask a lot of people, that was my next question I was going to ask you, is a lot of people are saying, well, we have the DNA and we have the confession, but a lot of people are comparing this case to the Central Park 5. It has a lot of similarities here. Tell us a little bit about, the NYPD's tactics from your history and your work in the community, and what tactics they use to do this, to black men or to black people in general. To get
what
these confessions out.
They go fishing. Anytime a black youth is arrested in an area where an unsolved murder or unsolved crime is, they go searching. So I remember I had one particular case where this young man was involved they were in a stolen car. So they were driving around in a stolen car, and they got busted, 4 of them. There was an unsolved killing, murder of a dope dealer in the area. So each one of them, they said, listen, we know you did the killing of the dope dealer. And they said that to each one of them. And the others that we have said, you're the one who did it. So the ones they said, no, you must be crazy. I don't know what you're talking about, killing no dope dealer. Those got away. One of them said, if they said I did it, no, I was the lookout. I didn't do it. So they went fishing, and they tried to put crimes on people, whether they do it or not. So he wound up putting himself at a spot that he, should have never even said anything. So
right.
When they constantly do that, then there are times where they actually want to find a suspect, and they will make sure that the DNA and the confessions occur. As in the Central Park jogger case, they did the same thing. They told them that the others said that you're the one who did this, and you're the one who took off her clothes. And they said, no, I didn't. They said that? No, I didn't. He took them off. He's the one who felt or whatever, know.
Right.
So they get them doing that, and none of them did anything.
Right.
All of them were innocent, but they had them saying things because they torture you. You're hungry, you're thirsty, you're nervous, you're there for hours, and sometimes even when your parents are there, they can still convince you to say something. So Youssef was the one who didn't say anything, and they still sent him away in the Central Park case.
Right.
So in this instance, they were looking for a black suspect. They wanted a black suspect, and Chanel Lewis was their victim. So they did the confession. When he finally confessed hours and hours later, it contradicted a lot of things, and they wound up having a coerced confession and very refutable DNA sampling process and results. They used that. The 5 jurors in the first trial said, we don't believe it. 5 of them. I sat there and I watched them jurors, and I watched the prosecutor perform and running up and down the court, shouting and pointing and going in Chanel's face and said, this killer here, this one right here. He kept doing that, and Chanel just stayed composed. He stayed calm. He never let him push his button, and he kept prancing up and down the court, and every other word out of his mouth, he was calling him a killer, this killer here. And so the jurors didn't buy it, and 5 of them said no. Then we get to this other jury, and I hear there was about 9 whites and 3 people of color, and all of a sudden now they put pressure on a white juror who says, I don't believe that he did the sexual assault. Now, Chanel didn't even admit to no sexual assault.
Right.
So now how could 2 jurors not believe there was that he did the sexual assault, but he did the choking? So who did the sexual assault? So they were ready to have another hung jury. And then these 2 jurors got pressured. One of them decided that he was going to go public with it. He went and he came in court, and when that was the day we were supposed to be sentencing that Wednesday, but it didn't occur because there was a motion to throw out the verdict because of jury misconduct. So at the hearing on Monday, this Monday, the judge decided that this juror was incredible, even though he said I was pressured. And when they finished, and this was a white juror saying it's not a black juror.
Right. Let me ask you a quick question. Now, I said something at the top of the podcast that this was an all-white jury that convicted him. Is that correct?
No, it was 9 whites and I think 3 people of color.
Okay, on the jury for this particular trial. The latest one. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So let me just make that correction. Okay, cool. What I wanted to ask you, go ahead. You had something else?
No, just to say that this judge was very racist. It was very biased toward the Chanel's family. He was horrible. And this is a judge who gotten so many of his cases, over 40 some of his cases, convictions were overturned. But anyway, he threw out and said he denied the motion. Took him 10 seconds after the trial. They went back and forth. He said, the motion denied, sentence tomorrow, have a good day.
Oh, wow.
And then the next day, he just said, after all was said and done, said this savage attack and interjecting God and all of this stuff, and gave him life without parole. And then the other sentencing didn't matter because he already had life without parole.
So we actually mentioned, this is all mentioned in the story, by the way. You can pick it up on newsstands. Now it actually starts on our front page and goes to page 3 if you want to read it in the paper. It's also available as the top story on our website. And I want to talk a little bit about your interaction with Chanel Lewis. You actually went to Rikers and spoke to him. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yes. I believed in his innocence before I met him because of the way this facts turned out in this case. But when I met him, Josh, no way he could have done what they claimed he did. No way. It just doesn't seem to be in his makeup at all. I meet a lot of people, and in the movement, you better learn how to read personalities.
Absolutely.
You better know how to read, even in the just living in the neighborhoods we live in, you better be able to read personalities. And I feel that I'm fairly good at that. You can see when you're supporting somebody, and then you can see something about them to say, I believe he's innocent, but this person could have done something like that. Not Chanel. I would put my life on it that he's innocent. When I met him, first of all, he was unbelievably calm. He has no history of any violence, none. They brought up things like he wanted to bring a knife to stab girls when he was young. He has no history of any violence toward anyone. You can see the calmness, and you can see his intelligence. He was very much aware of what was going on in the case. He said, Mr. Barron, I always wanted to meet you. I said, yes, I was in Albany. And he said, I'm so glad you came up. And so, Mr. Barron, do you think, I'm the one who told the lawyers that they need to put in some motion to get the jury in there. And he said, and let me tell you something else, Mr. Barron, do you think when I get out that I'll have to move out of state? Because I know the family must be very angry with me. He was very sensitive and concerned about them being angry with him. He said, because, I know they think I did, and they're probably going to be angry. I said, listen, Janelle, if that's a problem, that will be one I welcome. How we're going to protect you when you come out. I said, and then we start talking about the judge and parts of the case. And then I asked him, I was trying to get his mind off the case.
Right. I
said, hey, Janelle, what's your favorite sport? He said, I'm not into sports. I said, oh, what are you into? He said, technology. He said, Mr. Barron, I love technology, and I want to go to school to get a master's in technology, and I want to get into political science. I said, oh, that's great. So he started talking to me about, what he meant by technology, what he wanted to do with it. And then out of nowhere, he said, Mr. Barron, do you think you can get Carl Hastie to support me? I said, oh, he knew this Carl Hastie is the Speaker of the State Assembly.
Right.
But he was aware that I'm a State Assembly member and that Carl Hastie was the Speaker.
Okay.
I said, absolutely, I'll be glad to do that. He said, because that might be good if you get, because, I read a lot, Mr. Barron. I read a lot. And he had a pleasant smile, beautiful smile. He was pleasant. He was calm. Of course, a little nervous. He kept looking out of himself because he saw all of those, because I was there, the warden and everybody came down. But he was very calm. And then I have to give Speaker Hastie credit. He did, I called him up when I was in the car with his mother, and he spoke to the mother, and I told her to tell Chanel that, she spoke to Carl Hastie. So he's very much in touch with what's going on. He has a very peaceful nature about him. I absolutely am totally convinced that he's innocent.
And can you you've spoken with the mother quite a few times. You've been with her. Tell us how she's doing with all this, because we've seen her on TV, and in fact, I think I have a clip of her and what she said. I'm going to play it right now. A clip of what she said outside the courthouse this week. And I'm going to play that now. Here's Veta Lewis talking about her son. This is the day of the sentencing.
Because my son is innocent, and from day one, my son Channel Lewis is innocent. You know why he does this? Because this is an Italian, and this is racist. Why they do it? But I am not a racist because I am a mother. And I feel the veteran pain because they lost a daughter. But I too lost a son, and my son is not the killer.
And that was Veta Lewis speaking on her son Chanel Lewis on the day that he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Tell us about how she's doing. A lot of people want to know. We've seen her on television. I can't imagine what she's going through. How is she doing?
She's an incredibly strong woman, and so is his sister Stacy. They both have been with them so often, and I want to give credit to my staff member Mel Faulkner, Mr. Mel Faulkner. He would pick them up every day and take them to court, and at times I was in Albany, he still picked them up and attended court with them. They are incredibly strong, deeply spiritual, deeply religious. She's a strong, firm believer in God. She believes that there will still be justice, and she's going to continue to fight. But, she has to ventilate and get her frustration out. So that's why she stays out there for the demonstrations, and she tries to keep everybody united that's working on the case. And she's an incredibly strong woman, but she's also a human being.
Absolutely,
that's her baby.
Yeah.
That's her baby. So when we leave, and when I bring her home and we leave, she has to be in there. And she says that is the toughest part, because now she has to be with herself or with her daughter, and they're in the house now, no cameras, no supporters, no nothing. They're in the house, and they have to deal with the reality that their loved one has been incarcerated for 2.5 years already.
Yeah.
And that he may be in there for the rest of his life. She has hope and belief in God that this is going to be overturned. I have that same hope and belief that she has, and we're going to fight for that. But, once the cameras go, once the supporters go, and you're in your home by yourself, that is the toughest challenge. And then you got to make sure you keep your spirits up so he can keep his spirits up. And he's so sensitive and loving to his mother. He assures her when they visit. He was saying, "Ma, I'm okay. I'm fine." And he really looks it.
Yeah.
But I believe he does a lot of that because he wants her to rest in peace and not go home and be worried about him. So he said, "No, Mom, I'm fine. I just would like to get out of here, but I'm doing fine." It's an amazing family. And deeply spiritual.
They seem like it, and I saw her in that same clip that I just played on the videos. She has a strong relationship and a strong faith in her religion, I should say. And in a situation like this, that of course is always something that's needed. So tell us about the next steps. This has happened. A lot of people are asking, what are the next steps here? I know that the Legal Aid Society is helping out. They've vowed to continue their fight. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in terms of the next steps here.
Well, the next steps is, of course, the appellate appeal, and we're going to continue to fight for that. They already put in for the appeal. And also, we're going to contact the Innocence Project. I've got to call into them to see if there's anything they can do, because, they've gotten people out even after they've been incarcerated.
Right.
Got them out. So we're going to check with the Innocence Project, and we're going to continue to tell the public that we must continue to support, any support that you can give to the family by way of attending any rallies, any demonstrations, any calls into the appellate term, and calls into elected officials. And I must say that it was very disappointing to see so many absent elected officials and some of the more notable leaders that are usually out on all of these cases. For the sake of not messing up your podcast, I won't mention names. I'll leave it alone.
Okay.
But there's too many people that are always out on issues around, injustices, but were very, very absent, and notably absent in this case, because it's not one of those cases that if you have a political career and you're politically ambitious and you want to move up, or if you're a social justice leader or an activist and all of that, when you have someone who had DNA and a confession and a white woman was killed and raped and so heinously from Howard Beach like that, it takes people who are genuinely convicted to justice and not have any personal hesitation of fighting for justice. I mean, even if people would have called me up and said, Charles, I want to get involved.
Right.
Really think he's innocent? I didn't even get any of those calls. They just didn't show. And that's a shame.
I guess, go ahead.
No, I'm about to say it's a shame because any one of us can be a Janelle Lewis.
Yeah.
All
you mentioned that quite a few times, and you're absolutely right. Any of us could. Any of us could. Well, my last question to you before we wrap up is what a lot of people, when things like this happen, there's always a sense of despair in the community. What should people know about what's going on? What should people get out of this case? What's your final thought on this? Because this is, the headline. I just want to read the headline that we had in the paper on top of the headline that I just read is "It's not over," and that's definitely happening. From what you said, it's definitely not over. But what do you want the community to know about what's going on with this case and what they should be doing?
Well, I think y'all had a most appropriate headline. It's not over. And not only it's not over for Janelle Lewis and his family, it's not over for us black people in America. It's not over for us who are entrapped in a racist, parasitic, capitalist system and all of its injustices that they throw upon us. And sometimes it looks like we're not going to win because we're in poverty and some of the internalization of our oppression causes us to even kill each other or speak to each other out of name. Some of the music is denigrating. We're denigrating ourselves. Some of it is lifting us up. The police seem to get away with everything they do against us, and these capitalist robbers are just inflicting all of this poverty. You would think, are we ever going to get out of this? But I say to people that there is no form of our oppression that's permanent. It's all temporary. A lot of people think that, it's so enormous, they're so powerful, high technology and military force and economic capital, dollars, they got everything over us. But that's the same thing that the British Empire had, but it fell. They said the sun never set on the British Empire. Now it's a little cloudy country in Europe, and they're fighting Brexit, and they're still fighting, having their problems. They said the Roman Empire wouldn't fall. It fell. The Russian Empire fell. None of these forms of our oppression is permanent. It's all temporary. So you keep hope when you understand this is temporary. Some people say, well, Charles, how do you know capitalism ain't going nowhere?
Right.
You believe it's going to be a socialist society and all that. I said, you believe that capitalism is so powerful that it'll be forever? Name me a system that was forever. Slavery wasn't. Plantation slavery wasn't forever. I mean, we're still suffering from the vestiges of it.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So a lot of things go. So I just tell our people, you got to believe in yourself, and you got to believe in the annals of history that show the oppressed will inevitably succeed. And the only way that they keep us down is they create an illusion of invincibility when you start to say, we can't win.
Right.
But as long as you say what the Amsterdam News said in your title, it ain't over yet, we got to keep going, I believe justice will prevail inevitably.
All right. And with that, we'll conclude. Thank you so much, Assemblyman Charles Barron, for being on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you, Josh. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. That concludes this week's podcast. You can pick up the latest edition of the New York Amsterdam News on newsstands and get updates online at amsterdamnews.com. You can also keep up with us on Facebook at NY Amsterdam News and follow us on Twitter at NY Am News. This is Cyril Josh Parker. Thanks for listening.